Hello automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm going to tell you what my pick is for the best mobile operating system for your smart home and what that is for the next 4 to 5 years. If you haven't already joined Automate Your Life, go ahead, click that subscribe button. Of course, click the bell to get the notifications and join us here because we are all about automating your life, giving you back time. In terms of a smart home, the iPhone has always been very capable. They've had all of the applications you could ever want on their App Store, save for one, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And they've also gone ahead and developed Siri to go ahead and manage a lot of different things in your life. You can ask Siri a lot of questions and she's very capable. In fact, she is the #2 voice assistant as it relates to all of the tests and studies that have gone on. She's the second most accurate. On top of that, the brand new shortcuts functionality replaces that one application that I'm going to tell you about here called Tasker. Now, Tasker is available on Android, and that is the one application that you cannot get on an iOS device that you can get on an Android that relates to automation. And there are a number of automation tools on Android and on iOS, but Tasker is extremely powerful, and I would say that it rivals shortcuts in its capability. The only thing that I'll say for iOS that is maybe a little better with shortcuts is the user interface and the ability to share all of your shortcuts being so easy. Flipping over to Android, the application situation is really very similar. You have all of the smart home applications that you could ever want from every manufacturer. And the other piece for Android is that direct integration of the Google Assistant. Now, we talked about Siri being the #2. Well, Google Assistant is #1 in terms of voice assistants and is only getting better. And the integration there, when we're talking about voice assistants, is extremely powerful and only going to get better. For example, Duplex is now available in some cities in the US. If you don't know what Google Duplex is, it is the capability to make reservations through asking the Google Assistant. Now, that capability will continue to be expanded over time, and really only Android phones are going to be able to make those phone calls, or at least that's as far as I can tell, because Apple continues to close off other services like that. So when we're comparing the voice assistant, which is a cornerstone now for your smart home and for automating your life, clearly Android is the winner because Siri has not caught up. I don't think it can catch up to the Google Assistant, especially with Google Duplex coming. And the integration that Google has managed to create between the Google Assistant and Android is extremely powerful. Next up, let's talk about the operating systems themselves. They are both very old at this point when we talk about operating systems. I mean, Windows 95 and 98 and 2000 and ME and XP. I mean, there was a lot of operating systems when it came to Windows. Why hasn't there been so many different operating systems? You could say that the versions were really different, but honestly, the upgrade from iOS 11 to 12 was not that massive. There were some growth, and the changes from Android 7 to 8 to 9 haven't been that great either. So I don't see them on the same level as going from Windows 95 to 98 to XP or all of those different versions. So really what we have are a couple of relatively old operating systems. Now, one of the two companies, Apple and Google, are working on an updated version of their operating system, and one of them has either kept it completely quiet or is not doing that. And at this point, I would say that both operating systems need an upgrade. Now, the company that is upgrading their operating system is Google, and if you haven't heard of Fuschia, I recommend you go look up a video on it. It is in early stages of development, but it should be here, I would say, in that 1 to 2 year time frame, where some of the Android devices out there today will get an upgrade to Fuschia, and a great example of that is the Pixel 3. In terms of the OS as well, one key difference really stands out to me in the smart home, and that is the widgets capability. Now, iOS has a little widgets capability where you can kind of swipe to the left and then you get a little screen, and it's not very good. It doesn't allow you to control many things, and from the lock screen, you're not able to do a ton with your iPhone as is. Now, the difference on Android is the widgets capability, and that allows you to create a true dashboard, or in the automation industry, when we're talking about industrial applications, we call it an HMI, a human machine interface, and that's really what you can create very simply with some applications, and then using those widgets, you can create that on an Android tablet, and it can instantly become the center of your smart home. Outside of those things, the operating systems really become very similar because all of the applications are capable, but there are differences between iOS and Android, again, as it relates to other manufacturers. Now, we all know Apple doesn't allow anyone to use iOS and go out and create their own version of iOS or an iOS device. On the flip side, Android has multiple versions out there, and a great example of this is Samsung. Now, Samsung goes and they layer some software on top of Android, or the base Android, and some people like to call that bloatware. But some people really enjoy the additions that Samsung has made. And for owners with Samsung SmartThings, there is really great integration. And a number of people actually came and commented as I put out my, which phone am I going to buy video here earlier in the week. When I put that out there, a lot of people came out and said, hey, the Samsung SmartThings integration with a Samsung phone, an S9 or an S9 Plus, is excellent. So make sure you look at the S10. Now, that addition, or that additional bloatware, as some people call it, to me, I don't like that in a lot of cases, but you can still go out and get vanilla or base Android devices. And I would say in general, that's what I'm looking for, and then to go ahead and customize my experience. Now, moving on to hardware, and this is where it starts to get really interesting to me. The iPhones, I still believe, are the top hardware device out there. A case can be made for some of Samsung's more recent devices. I think they're excellent, but the Pixel 3, I don't think in terms of hardware capabilities is necessarily at the same level as an iPhone XS Max. Now, the differential is Google comes, and I think they're the best software company on the planet, and they come with amazing software to make their camera perform better than all of the cameras that Apple has put on their iPhone XS Max. So what you have is what looks like a better camera on a Pixel 3, but actually isn't a better camera. So to me, Apple devices from a hardware perspective are still the best on the planet, and they are really refined at this point. When you really just grab an iPhone, you're not feeling anything strange. There's nothing weird about them. And it's a highly refined device that has been refined over multiple versions. So when we go down the line in terms of hardware and we start talking about the lower level iPhones and we're comparing those with the Android devices, in general, what I'll say, other than a couple of oddities on the Android side, is Apple's top end is more expensive than the top end of Android, and the low to medium end or range of iPhones are usually in that flagship phone range of lots of the Android makers. The OnePlus 6T is a great example of a flagship phone that has hit really the same level of the same price point as the iPhone XR. So in the end, for that refinement that you're getting from Apple, and I'll say that refinement is not always there in the Android devices. Some makers like Samsung are obviously extremely refined in what they're doing, but the iPhone refinement, for that, what you're doing is you're paying a premium. And for the software that we've already talked about, you're not really paying for a better voice assistant. You're not paying for a better Maps application or a better email application or really any better home automation application. So what are you paying extra for now? And ultimately, that brings me to my answer. The answer is Android. You do need to go out and buy an Android, but it is important which Android you buy. You cannot go and call every Android device equal. We talked about the differences between the vanilla to that bloatware or the layered on additions that some of these companies put on. You know, in general, what I'll say, I think you want base Android, and the reason I say that is that upgrade to Fuschia. So for the next 4 to 5 years of my life, what I'm going to recommend to you guys is to go out and buy a device with base Android on it. And the best example of that is a Pixel 3 or a Pixel 3 XL. There are other budget versions of this. The OnePlus 6T is a great essentially base vanilla Android device that you can go out and buy, and there are other versions out there. The Xiaomi products in general tend to be very close to base Android with some additional things like gesture support. So here come the links, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.